This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and we've looked at a couple of MSI gaming laptops before, from the big Dominator machines down to the Ghost series. And there's also the Stealth series. It's a skinny 17-inch. The Ghost is the skinny 15-inch. The Dominator is the big desktop replacement 17-inch with the most powerful graphics available from NVIDIA today. Today we're looking at the Apache Pro series. It kind of sits in the middle. They're, relatively speaking, decently slim, but these are not ultra portable, ultra slim kind of machines, but they're not chunky monkeys either. The prices are also, for gaming laptops with really good specs, fairly reasonable too. Less than the Dominator, less than the Ghost and the Stealth on average too, where you're paying for thinness and lightness. We have one that starts at around $1,100, another one that starts at around $1,200-$1,300 here, and we have both the GE62, which is the 15.6-inch, and the GE72, which is the 17.3-inch Apache Pro. So we're going to look at both models now, latest Intel Skylake inside. Both of these have NVIDIA GTX 960M graphics inside. SteelSeries backlit multi-zone colorful backlit keyboard, all the bells and whistles, and we're going to look at it now. All right, so here we have two loud and proud gamers. They can also be desktop replacements. Both of these are MSI Apache Pro GE series machines. Latest Intel Skylake CPUs inside, NVIDIA GTX 960M graphics. They're also available with 970M, but both of the ones that we have here have 960M. 16 gigs of RAM, 128 gig SSD, and an M.2 slot plus a terabyte 7200 RPM hard drive in the 2.5-inch bay. So pretty well equipped machines, and it's good stuff for the price, honestly. The smaller one, the 15.6-inch, starts around $1,100 or so. The 17.3-inch is around $1,300. So you get a lot of bang for your buck, and unlike the MSI Ghost Pro that we reviewed, or the Stealth Pro that we haven't covered, that's just the 17-inch version of the Ghost, essentially. These are not super thin and light. The Ghost is a great machine, and it's one of the most portable around, but you're going to have shorter battery life, and you're going to have a noisier fan and more heat due to the really thin design and the superb horsepower that's inside. These are a good compromise. They're not as big as something like the Dominator line, the GT line, that's really a huge desktop replacement, but they're big enough and thick enough that they actually can have some pretty adequate cooling inside, so surface temperatures, bottom temperatures aren't that hot. The fans, of course, will run when you play games. That's inevitable with a gaming laptop, but not at the maddening whir and shriek, say, of a skinny gaming laptop like the Ghost series. Also, these are a lot more affordable than the Dominator line, so that stands in their favor too, closer to mainstream pricing for pretty powerful gaming laptops. So this one here is the GE62. That's the 15.6-inch. This is the 17-inch GE72 model. You're getting pretty much the same internals. You're getting the same ports. Both of these have a DVD drive, an optical drive on board. So really, you're looking at which size you prefer more than anything else between these two. The 17-inch will run a little cooler and a bit quieter if you're playing games, just because there's more room for a bigger copper heat sink and for air circulation inside, but neither of these gets too hot. We'll talk about thermals some more later. Also, you can get gaming laptops, obviously, from some resellers who specialize in that. And our GE62 Apache Pro came from Exotic PC, which, if you look at the lid right there, it becomes pretty obvious, doesn't it? Because they can put vinyl skins on the lid for you, and they've put their own on this review unit that we have here. And their prices are actually very competitive. I know some of you like to buy from them, and I can understand that completely, because they'll do things like, if you want to have your CPU and GPU repasted with diamond thermal compound, if you want to have them handle some internal upgrades because you'd rather not take your PC apart, they do all sorts of little stuff like that, and you're not really paying more for the base machine itself than you would if you're buying from any other retailer. So this is pretty cool stuff, and they actually give you this binder that shows you all the tests that they put it through and all that sort of thing. So here it is. You know, it kind of makes you feel good when you get one of these kind of things here, and they've got their warranty, their thank you page right there. Thanks for buying one of these. Their ownership certificate, and just about every test you can think of. This is, in fact, all the benchmarks that we run the machines through. They do power supply testing, and then they put all of your MSI driver disk in here and the getting started guide and all that normal stuff. So with these machines, it's not that hard to open them up and upgrade. With something like the Ghost series, it's famously challenging to get to some of the internals, because some of them you actually have to take the motherboard apart flip it around the other side to get to the other set of RAM modules, that sort of thing. With these, it's pretty straightforward. But anyway, now you know why we have the big decal on this one. Now, the first thing to take a look at here is the difference between the 15 and the 17-inch. The size is not that different. That's because MSI does a wide chassis. They do this throughout most of all their gaming machines, so they include a number pad there. So notice it's almost as long as the 17-inch, the 15.6-inch. So in terms of volume displacement, you're not saving that much on size. And if we look at the top edge up here, you can see the difference in height there. So they're closer in size than you might expect. Now, it's a little hard to see here because of the decal that's been put on top, so we'll look at our 17-inch naked model. This is the latest redesign of the lid that MSI has done. They've got a double waterfall instead of the single line that they had here. They still have their sort of Ferrari-like badge going on. The slight point to the case up here. This is metal, this is aluminum. Might not look at it at first because it has a brush finish, and we're used to seeing so many Asian manufacturers who use brush finish to kind of hide the fact they have plastic. This really is metal. It gets cold in the winter, which I can attest to right now. And if you open it up, the deck also, and you can see this display goes way far back on the 17-inch model. Right there. We got the same brushed aluminum finish. This actually really is metal. This is a SteelSeries backlit keyboard with plenty of travel because these are not super duper crazy thin machines, and it's multi-zone, multicolor backlighting that you can program. And I actually like the keyboard on this better than on the Dominator GT72. Go figure. You've got the light ring around each key, which looks pretty cool, and this is just a little bit more damped and a little bit more tactile. It's a very nice keyboard for those of you who actually have to get work done on these productivity-wise, and it's very pleasant for gaming too. I mean, it's not a mechanical keyboard or something like that, no cherry mechanism, but it's very positive feel, long, deep travel. It's pretty nice stuff. The trackpad. This has an odd brushed surface on it too for, I suppose, purely aesthetic reasons. I don't know. Only MSI knows the answer to that. It might, in their opinion, look good. It doesn't feel particularly good. It's not a very even surface, and it's a Synaptics trackpad, and we have Windows 10 here, and Windows 10 has brought a lot of machines with improved trackpads. As MSI trackpads go, this one sucks less. That's about the most I can say for it. Their trackpads just really aren't very good. The buttons aren't as hard to click as they used to be, which is good. You could just about dislocate your thumb or something like that, or your pointing finger. Doing that, it's moderately predictable in terms of tracking behavior and all that sort of thing, but I really don't like their trackpads too much at all. And I would assume that because they're really in the business of making desktop replacements and gaming rigs, they figure you're probably using a mouse anyway, so they're not really trying too hard when it comes to the trackpad. And to give you an idea of the size difference, this is the MSI Dominator. This is the GT72 Pro model with G-Sync here, and the footprint might be pretty close. The Dominator is a little bit bigger, but wait till you see when we switch to the side view shot. You can see the absolute difference in thickness that makes the Apache Pro seem, relatively speaking, thin. Here from our side view shot, you can see there's this much of my finger difference in height right here, so massively thicker. So for those of you who like the idea of the GT72 Dominator, but you know, I mean, that's a chunky monkey. You're not going to be carrying this around. This is really a desktop replacement that you're probably not going to take with you. This is something that you can take with you, and it weighs about 6.5 pounds. For a 17-inch capable gamer, that is not bad for our GE72 Apache Pro. And now we have the 15.6-inch GE62 over here with the latest edition of the Dell XPS 15 with Infinity Display. Now that is an ultra-portable thin and light that competes with the 15-inch MacBook Pro, so it's sort of in a different class. It's not designed to be quite as high performance oriented. Not that it isn't a very good performer, the XPS 15 is, but the fan's going to work harder, the CPU and the GPU are going to get hotter doing the same thing. They do have just about the same internals in terms of specifications, which is the interesting thing. So there you have the difference there. Again, the XPS is going to be thinner. Now this guy weighs 5.3 pounds, which for a 15.6-inch gaming laptop or desktop replacement sort of laptop isn't bad at all. Of course, the Dell is even lighter at around 5 pounds, 4.5 to 5 pounds, depending on the configuration. So how about build quality and ports? The ports on both of these are the same, despite the difference in size. You can see we have separate microphone and headphone jack right there. So if you have actually a headphone with split output there, combo mic headphone kind of thing going on. You've got that covered. Audio quality is really very good on this. This has an ESS Sabre audio DAC. Both of these do. So for high-res audio, the sound is very good. The built-in speakers are also quite good too. And we'll show you an internal shot where this has stereo speakers plus a subwoofer on the bottom. And each of the stereo speakers is firing from the front grille here. And there's actually 2 drivers on each side. Very loud, very full. It uses the Nahimic software for your audio settings. It's okay. Some people like the old Sound Blaster better. It gets the job done. The speakers are also very loud and full, sound much better than most notebooks. So continuing on to what else we have here, USB-C for your modern port, 2 USB 3.0 ports, HDMI DisplayPort. This can drive 2 4K displays simultaneously. Gigabit Ethernet, that is killer Ethernet. The Wi-Fi in this is Intel Wi-Fi, dual band, Wi-Fi 807 AC plus Bluetooth. You don't get killer Wi-Fi unless you go to some of the more expensive models, like some of the higher end Ghost Pro models, the Dominators, and so on. That said, the Intel Wi-Fi is just fine. I have a lock slot over here, and on this side, there's your optical drive. 1 screw on the bottom, and you can pull that out. And the only time you're going to want to do that is if you're taking the bottom cover off. Another USB port right there, and there's your SD card slot, and that is where the power adapter goes. Now on the bottom of this, lots of ventilation here. You can actually see some of the copper heat sink showing through in here. Got 2 RAM slots, an M.2 SSD slot, the 2.5-inch drive, a socketed wireless card. And it's not that hard to take apart, other than the fact that, my God, I've never seen more Phillips head screws. There's like 14 Phillips head screws all the way around here if you want to take it apart. First one you have to worry about is this one right here, and that's the one that holds the optical drive. So you unscrew that and you can take out the whole optical drive. Once you pop out the optical drive, you'll see 3 Phillips head screws underneath where the optical drive are. You also have to undo those, and that takes an even smaller head Phillips head, a jeweler size, real small. That's your subwoofer right over here. Build quality on this is pretty good and solid. The rubber feet are well mounted on this. Everything is good except for typical of MSI. They have a very thin lid, and there is plenty of flex for those who hate it. Now, I don't mean so much the lateral flex, although you can't hear, but always with MSI, when you push on the bezel, you see how much it moves right here? It doesn't really affect anything, and I've actually owned MSI gaming laptops for a couple of years, and I've not had any problems with them, but it doesn't give you that quality feel. That's just my one complaint right over there, is that kind of, yeah. So before we talk about the display, one more thing about the keyboard. This is an MSI thing. They do a couple of things weird. They move the Windows key over to here. And the delete key is up over here above the number pad. It's just the way MSI is. You've got your turbo mode fan speed control right over here, your SteelSeries launcher control right there, your power button. There is no separate switch for graphics between integrated and dedicated graphics because these use NVIDIA Optimus automatic switching of graphics, unlike the Dominator that we reviewed. Okay, that out of the way, and you get used to it. It's just how MSI rolls. The display, no matter which size you get, you're getting 1920 by 1080 full HD matte IPS display. Both of our units have an LG brand display panel inside, so less glare. I always like that. Nice for gaming. Makes it easier to see, makes it seem brighter, whether it is or not. Now, MSI makes a big deal about how they color calibrate this, and this has, high percentage of sRGB, not Adobe RGB, just sRGB. And these measured at 95% of sRGB, which for a higher-end laptop is pretty good. Didn't hit quite 99 there. Calibration was okay. They do have several different color presets you can choose from. One is sRGB, which should be the most accurate. Using their default one, it was pretty off to basically make things look brighter, make the whites look brighter, but it calibrates very easily to just about perfect. So for people who are using this for graphic design or video production, it's a good display. Honestly, it is. Again, not touch. It's a matte, non-touch display here in the Apache line. For graphics, NVIDIA GTX 960M graphics, 2 GB DDR5 VRAM inside. By the way, the main RAM in this is DDR4 RAM. It has 2 RAM slots. And Exotic PC actually put into 16 gig modules. Those are still pretty hard to find, and they were Samsung brand. The first time I've seen ones from Samsung. So it is possible to bring these up to 32. Anyway, the GTX 960M we've seen in several laptops, the ASUS ZenBook Pro UX 501, the XPS 15 Infinity that we recently reviewed. So you'll find it in some slim and light, more business and pro apps oriented models, and you'll find it in a bunch of gamers. It's also possible to get it with the GTX 970M, but like I said, both of our units came with the 960. 960 is pretty strong. We're going to have a separate gaming demo video as always, but it's strong enough to play current modern games at medium to high settings at least. Some of them you're going to end up with more high settings, some of them are going to be more towards medium. Games like Far Cry 4, Fallout 4 play very nicely at this, and for those of you who like to see at least 45 frames per second at 1080p, you can do that. So powerful enough to game. And the good thing about the chassis not being super slim and light like some of the more pro apps, business-oriented laptops is the fans come on, you'll certainly hear them, but they're not going to drown out the game audio. And the CPU and the GPU temperatures stay reasonably cool. In fact, cooler than certainly the 15-inch MacBook Pro with Retina display. And even the XPS 15, though, it does a pretty good job of keeping the CPU and GPU cool, despite the fact that it's so thin. Now, switching over to the GE72, the bigger screen model right here. Oh, that's our display calibration software loading right there. They're both similar quality. The 15.6-inch will have higher PPI because you're squeezing the 1080p resolution into a smaller panel, so it will look a little bit sharper. It was also a little bit brighter in our tests, where this measured 260 nits of brightness. We hit 290 nits on the smaller one. It could be the variance in supply. It's hard to say about that, but that's how ours measured out. In terms of color gamut, they are the same. In terms of calibratableness, is that a word? I don't know. They are both equally very good there. So it really does depend on which screen size you prefer. If you tend to use an external monitor, you probably want to go for the smaller machine, perhaps. If you're primarily going to be using the built-in display, it's nice to have more room here. Also, the bigger chassis will be a little bit cooler and quieter, but both of those, to go on with our discussion of temperatures, are pretty cool. We have serious, beautiful copper heat sinks going on in here, dual fan design, the air intake from the front, exhaust out the bottom and the rear. It's very well done. The top deck on our 17-inch model was 76 degrees Fahrenheit on this side and 92 on the other. You can tell where the hot spots are right there when playing games for, say, 45 minutes. I'm not talking about productivity where they stay almost chilly cool. It's kind of nice. The bottom will get a little bit warm. This side will get a little bit warm, but not too bad. The keyboard area isn't too bad. This strip right here on both of them is the hot spot. If you're gaming, if you've been playing Fallout 4 for an hour, it will hit about 101 degrees Fahrenheit, a little bit above human body temperature. When you exceed human body temperature, that's when things start feeling toasty. This, on average, manages to be about 3-4 degrees cooler in terms of surface temperatures. The bottoms on both of these stay surprisingly cool. Really, more of the heat is actually directed towards the top. Much of the area on the bottom of these is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so well below body temperature. The one hot spot right around this area can reach up to about 100, which is not bad compared to something like the Ghost Pro that could hit 120, 130. Now that feels really burning hot. This, at best, is pleasantly warm in the winter, and you'll want to use a laptop cooler or a magazine between it and you in your lap in the summer if you're playing games. Now both of these are running on the same CPU inside. We have a quad-core 45-watt 6th generation Intel Skylake 2.6 gigahertz Core i7-67HQ CPU. That has turbo boost to 3.5 gigahertz. Both of these have Intel HD 530 graphics, switchable with the NVIDIA GTX 960M again. So let's take a look at our benchmark numbers here, which are quite good. And you can see right here, this is 3D Mark 11, and that is our performance score, 5776 right there. And for the extreme test, it scored 1858. Again, both of these machines score the same. They have the same hardware inside. For PC Mark 8, we'll bring up that screen next. And you can see it scored 3701. That's for the home accelerated test. W prime, it computed pi in 11.3 seconds. Now there's an indication of the quad-core CPU versus your dual-core ULV 15-watt CPUs used in your typical Ultrabook, where it takes about 19 seconds to compute pi. So 11.3, we're looking at much faster speeds here. Likewise, with Geekbench 3, we'll see the multi-core score is going to be higher because it's got more cores to work with. The single-core score is 3660. That's not so unlike a dual-core CPU, but the multi-core is 13,480. So pretty high there. Now, the Dell XPS 15 Infinity also scores pretty well in Geekbench. You're looking at also very good computational speed. And the same thing for the Asus ZenBook Pro UX 501 and for the 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. So all of these have similar horsepower, except for the Mac is generationally behind, but still CPU performance didn't change much between generations either. For Unigine Heaven, 1080p high graphics test, no tessellation. It managed to keep it chilling at 67 degrees centigrade for the GPU. And the CPU, by the way, usually hangs in the mid-60s if you're really taxing it hard with gaming, with video export, that sort of thing. Well below the thermal maximum, which is around 100 degrees centigrade. So these guys do run nice and cool, relatively speaking. Scored 45.6 frames per second in that test, which yields a score of 1148. For 3D Mark CloudGate, 16,995. 3D Mark Fire Strike Extreme, 2019. 3D Mark Ice Storm Unlimited, 120,160. So they score where we would expect them to score in all respects, which is to say, quite good. This is not going to beat the pants off of a Dominator Pro with a GTX 980M, but you're paying a lot less money, and you've got something that is a lot smaller and lighter to carry around, too. All right, so I was claiming those speakers are pretty darn good. Not just loud, but nice and full. And in fact, I like to use one of these as my TV surrogate because the sound is so good. Let's watch our XPS Infinity video review so you can hear the speakers. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and here's what you've been waiting for. This is the 2015 Dell XPS 15 Infinity model with the Infinity display, edge-to-edge display, in other words, model number 9. So that's pretty loud, that's pretty full. That's 70% volume right there. It is very pleasing if you do want to use it to watch movies or videos, and it's great for gaming also. Most of the time when I play games on these, I keep the volume at about 45% or so, and I find it perfectly loud. Anything louder than that, you better be ready to share the action with your family, whether they want to hear it or not. So how about battery life? You know, gaming laptops, they don't have the greatest reputation in that department. Well, here's the charger. It's a 120-watt charger, which is adequate to keep it and the graphics card powered up, even if you're doing something very demanding. Not a bad size, certainly a lot smaller again than the Dominator. Power supply, not so different from the size of the Ghost and Stealth Pro, since again, they have the same internals. They need a certain level of power supply. Battery life on these has been pretty good. Even the GT72 Dominator surprised us, and that one was running on Broadwell CPUs. These two Skylake models right here, because they have Optimus switchable graphics, that really helps a lot. And we've been averaging about 5 hours, 5.5 hours on a charge, doing productivity kind of tasks. If you're going to be gaming, count on 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. I mean, most of us don't play games unplugged that often, I don't think. And if you're using this on the road and you're doing some video editing for 1080p video, that sort of thing, your battery life is going to be shorter there than it would be if you're just doing Word, Excel, social networking in the web, or streaming video, something like that. But not an embarrassment by any means, not the 2-hour battery life we used to see in a lot of gaming laptops. It's livable. And once again, we will have a separate gaming demo video. So for those of you who want to see these in action, playing games, we'll have that ready for you. So there you have it, the MSI Apache Pro, the GE62, the GE72, 15-inch and 17-inch models. As you can see, pretty much the same thing. It depends on the size that you want, primarily there. They're real good, solid gaming laptops. They're not the most powerful, but they're not the most expensive either. For the price that you're paying here, they're quite good. Now, these are not really competing with something like the Dell XPS 15 Infinity, though some of you may be considering that, but that is a even thinner, lighter, smaller machine that really goes up against the, say, the Ghost among MSI machines. But there are a few really strong rivals in the United States market, honestly, for something that gives you this kind of power, the upgradability, and the features for a price that's running $1,100 to $1,300. It's not bad. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full written review and subscribe to our YouTube channel.